Welcome to the beautiful Olympic National Park, which is located on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State. This is one of the top 15 most visited national parks in America, and that's because it has some of the most diverse ecosystems in this country as well. The park is separated into 4 distinct zones, which I'm going to do my best to show you on this several-day solo road trip. The park has the mountains, which make up most of the eastern side of the park. There is the iconic rainforest, the lowlands of lakes, rivers, and waterfalls, and of course, the beautiful coastline. If you're a serious hiker like me, one of the areas of the park that you will definitely want to explore are the mountains on the eastern side of Olympic National Park and into Olympic National Forest. So right now I'm actually going to start a hike up to Mt Townsend. This is kind of on the northeastern corner of the park, and it's supposed to have spectacular views not only of the mountain ranges, but on a clear day, Mount Rainier. One of the really great things about this park is that the 101 actually circumnavigates the Olympic Peninsula and the national park. So being able to explore this park is actually really easy. You don't have to do any backtracking. I'm actually going to be exploring the park basically counterclockwise from the northeast corner, which is where I am now, heading over to the northwest, then heading south and doing kind of the bottom part of the park, some of the tidal beaches and southern side over there. So it's really great to be able to explore in this way and not just come in and out on one made road. So I'm really looking forward to exploring here. And it gives you so much variety and also so much of a bigger area than most national parks allow. I am loving the scenery up here. I'm about halfway, and now the views of the mountain range here are absolutely spectacular. As you can see, it's still a beautiful sunny day. I was a little worried when I started the trail because I did see some clouds rolling in, but most of them are just rolling right off the tops of the mountains here. It is absolutely stunning up here. Little bit over a mile to go to reach the summit. And while that first 2 miles was pretty steep, it doesn't really compare to the steepness of the North Cascades, which is where I was just a few weeks ago. So far so good. I will see you guys at the top. Much like the Cascades, a lot of the trails here in the Olympics are pretty steep. This one has about 2,500 feet of elevation gain in just a few short miles, so you will be climbing just from the start. Now, getting to this trail also is on about 20 miles of dirt roads, so it does take a little bit, but one of the reasons I chose this trail was because the reviews that I read said few and far between as far as people. And if you guys haven't been on this channel long, you know that I really enjoy being out here in nature pretty much to myself. So if you're looking for a quieter trail, this is definitely one of those. If you need more suggestions on trails, because I know I get asked this question a lot, I use the app All Trails. Now there are a lot of hiking apps, but I've been using this one for a long time. This is not sponsored at all. It's just the app that I like to go to. They have reviews, there are usually recent photos. And if you have the pro version, you can also download those offline maps. So the moment you step off the trail, your phone or your watch is going to tell you that you're off the route. So it's a really good safety tool as well. Just got to the summit here and just absolutely spectacular views from up here. Every direction. You've got beautiful mountain ranges with the clouds rolling in. You've got Seattle off in the distance, Mount Rainier, and the beautiful Puget Sound down below. I am back at the trailhead here in my car. What a fantastic hike that was. Spectacular views, just absolutely wonderful. It took me about 5 hours to do this hike at a pretty steady pace, so that should be a pretty good indication for any of you that are wanting to do this hike how long it's going to take. Now from here, I'm actually heading to Skwim, which I think that's how you pronounce it. It's one of the towns here on the northern side of the park. That's where I'm going to be spending the night, grabbing some food. So from here, it's about 20 miles on dirt roads and then a little bit of the highway to get there. All right, everybody, so I totally screwed up the pronunciation of this town. It's actually Skwim, like scream. So Sequim was definitely not right. I actually just picked up some takeout. I'm here in my little motel room that I got, and haven't decided yet. Might go out and try to get some photos of the moon, but might also just stay in and get a good night's sleep as well, because we've got lots more adventure tomorrow. All right, good morning, everybody. So this is the little motel I stayed at last night. This is the outside. It's basic, but like most of the American national parks, finding lodging around the park that's affordable is pretty difficult. This place was just around $120 a night, so you're not gonna find a lot of nice stuff. This was fine, it was clean, it's basic, it's a motel, but most of the stuff is going to be $200 plus unless you want to camp, or there is also Wander Camp here, which is a glamping place, and a couple other smaller places like that around the peninsula. But keep that in mind when you're coming here. Definitely plan ahead, especially if you have specific places that you want to stay in, so that you can lock in those lower rates. Okay, so this is the little town of Skwim. There are actually quite a few coffee shops in this town. As you may know, this is one of the staples to buy morning. So, found one called the Rain Shadow Coffee, and I'm gonna head in there. After a great breakfast sandwich, I was back in the car for the 1-hour drive to the Hurricane Ridge entrance station. Welcome to Hurricane Ridge. Now, if you're looking for accessible trails, there are actually a lot of them up here on this ridgeline. A couple of paved paths that you can take, a couple of trails along the ridgeline. So it's a really great place if you're looking for some shorter and more accessible things to do for anyone in the family. Now, this place is actually named Hurricane Ridge because it experiences some of the most extreme weather in this park. Oftentimes you will have super high wind gusts up here, up to 75 miles an hour. There is also in the winter time 30 feet of snow on average, so there's actually a ski area up here as well. Now, Hurricane Hill is just down behind me here. That's one of the shorter and more popular hikes to do up here. You can also do Klahhane Ridge, which unfortunately right now is actually mostly closed. There was a cougar attack up here just a few days ago, and they've closed kind of that whole section of the park that goes down to the campground where it happened. But if you're looking for fantastic views, even if you don't want to hike or walk a lot, this is definitely a spot you need to come. So evidently the visitor center here at Hurricane Ridge actually burned down. I'm not sure when that happened. I'm assuming last year, but normally there used to be a cafe up here, a store, and a visitor center where you could get information. Right now it is definitely closed. Now, one thing I love is driving dirt roads. So if you like me and you aren't afraid of some hairy driving, then a drive down the Obstruction Point Road is a must. Now you can access this right from the top of Hurricane Ridge. This has been called Washington's scariest road and is Olympic National Park's highest elevation road. It has narrow and steep drop-offs in many places along the road, and you have to maneuver lots of switchbacks as you head up to its highest point called Obstruction Point, which sits at 6,150 feet above sea level. Right along the shores of Lake Crescent, you'll find the trailhead to MaryMere Falls. This is definitely one of the popular and short trails that you can do at just a 1.5 mile round trip. The trail to MaryMere Falls begins at the Storm King Ranger Station on the shores of Lake Crescent and traverses less than a mile through old-growth forest, over the Barnes Creek, and to a short loop that showcases the falls. Good morning. It is day 3 here in the Olympics. My plan this morning was to show you some of the lakes and waterfalls in the lowlands here, and I was on my way to Sol Duc waterfall, but passed by this lake this morning. It is just glass-like and it definitely calls for a swim. Could you find a better way to wake up than this right here? You know, morning swims are something that remind me so much of growing up. Actually, my dad's best friend, they had a house on the lake I grew up on, and one of the rules at their house was that there was no pancakes until you went for a swim in the lake. So every morning you would get up early, you would put on your bathing suit, and whether it was warm, cold, or rainy, you would jump in the lake and go for a swim. And it's moments like this, just picture perfect, crystal clear glass out here, that just remind me so much of childhood. And no matter what kind of day I'm having, you're gonna get this, a big giant smile. This area of the lakes and the lowlands has so many great trails. Whether you want to do something through some of the big tall trees, or you want to hike to a waterfall, or just around the lake, there's definitely a lot of options here, and it's hard to choose. Right now I'm going to Sol Duc waterfall. This is one of the more popular trails in the park. It's less than a mile, so pretty accessible for most people if you want to do something short. And this is right near Sol Duc Lodge, which is actually one of the national park lodges. They have some hot springs that you can swim in there, and there's a campground as well. Really nice place to stay here on the northern side of the park. One of my favorite parts of the lakes and lowlands are the waterfalls. There are actually 25 of them on the Olympic Peninsula, which makes seeing them all in one trip almost impossible. But MaryMere Falls and Sol Duc waterfalls are certainly two of the crowd favorites. From the waterfalls, I headed west, and it wasn't long before I was back out of the car again because there are just so many beautiful places to pull over on this drive. Just over my left here is actually the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Just across the channel is actually Vancouver Island, where I spent a week hiking just a couple of weeks ago. So if you haven't watched that video on my solo hike on the West Coast Trail, definitely check it out. But this area of water is known as the graveyard of the Pacific, and where we are right now is actually called Shipwreck Point. A lot of dangerous rocks and huge tidal shifts in this area. But if you come up here, definitely take your time. I love times like this where the fog is just sitting right on the beach. It's just absolutely beautiful. This part of Washington isn't just spectacular because of the national park. It's the entire Olympic Peninsula that is full of absolutely beautiful places, stunning coastline, picture-perfect forest. So definitely don't just visit the national park. Come and explore some of the peninsula as well. Right now, I've actually gotten off the 101 and I'm going west along the coastline here. I'm in a place called Klahhane Bay right now, and I'm heading to the farthest point west that I can go, and I think you're going to love the views there. We are back on the trail in a place called Nia Bay. This is on the Makah tribal lands. You do need a $20 recreation permit to come and experience the natural areas here, but right now we're going to the most northwestern point in the contiguous USA. The main body of water in this area is called the Salish Sea, which is really a tongue twister. Try saying it fast. But what is right next to us is the Strait of Juan de Fuca. This is about 96 miles long, and it's the main outlet for the sea into the Pacific Ocean. Now, the international boundary between Canada and the United States runs directly down the center of this strait as well. The strait serves as not only a migratory passage for hundreds of marine species and contains 95 miles of floating kelp, but it also has 160 miles of non-floating kelp, 75 miles of eelgrass, and the majority of Washington's coastal kelp beds. These are extremely important ecosystems that provide habitat for food like salmon, birds, marine mammals, and foraging fish. Wow, this is gorgeous. You won't want to forget your binoculars up here because there are so many birds, cormorants, puffins, hawks, and if you're lucky, you can even spot some whales and sea lions out here as well. Next stop, definitely snack time. It's about 3:30. I actually skipped lunch today, but when I came into Nia Bay and stopped at the visitor center to get my recreation pass, I asked where to eat in town, and the woman told me to stop at Calvin's Crab House, and that's where I'm heading next. There's still a lot more of this day to go. From the Makah tribal lands, I've actually hopped back in the car, drove about an hour back along the 101 towards the southern coast, and I'm gonna go to some of the southern beaches in just a second, but I wanted to show you where I'm staying tonight because I'm glamping at a place called Mosquatch, and this is it. So this is my tent. Pretty nice. Good morning from Mosquatch. I haven't seen any Sasquatch yet. It was actually a really quiet night and I slept really well. So this little glamping resort is in Forks, Washington. And if you're a Twilight fan, you might recognize the name because that town from the movie Twilight is not a made-up town. It's actually, this is it. We're here, right on the Olympic Peninsula here. This town is really small, only about 3,500 people, but it sits right on the southern side of the Olympic Peninsula between the Pacific Ocean and the Hoh Rainforest. And we're going to be doing a little bit of both of those things today. I slept remarkably well last night, feeling really refreshed this morning. I'm going to finish my coffee and then we'll hit the road. This area of the park gives visitors neck-craning views of the towering spruce and hemlock, many of them draped with mosses and lichens, making the canopy above look like something out of a fairy tale. This area gets up to 12 feet of rainfall per year, and that's why it is able to stay this lush. I've been to some other places like this around the world, like the Klahhane National Forest in the Canary Islands, but this is pretty unique for America, and that's why so many people flock here. This section of the park has just one main area by the visitor center, and it's from here that most of the little trails branch off from. There are some short ones that are really family friendly, like the Hall of Moses and also the Spruce Nature Trail. Right now I'm actually on the Hoh River Trail. This is a long trail, 17 miles. It's a great backpacking route, but if you want to kind of get away from the crowds and just do a couple miles of this, it's another great option too. For backpackers, this is a great trail where you can actually hike to a glacier, but you'll have to snag a permit first. Now, if you really want to see this rainforest at its finest, you want to come here when it's a little bit cooler, when it's rainy and misty and there is fog through here. Spring and fall are great times. Right now it is hot, and that's not how this rainforest should really ever be. But I've had 6 weeks of almost perfect weather between here in the PNW and Alaska, which means the climate is changing, and hopefully these forests can withstand what's happening. This habitat is extremely sensitive to drought, as mosses, unlike ferns or true leaves, don't actually have the waxy cuticle of other plants that help them retain moisture. Since mosses and lichens provide so much for this ecosystem, periods of dryness could have long-lasting and damaging effects to the entire rainforest. Now, one thing I noticed a lot of in the forest around here are these hollows underneath the trees. I've always thought they were animal holes, and some of them have become animal holes, but they're actually formed from the decaying logs of old trees. Now, new little seedlings sprout up through these ancient logs, and when they become big giant trees and the old log rots away, you're left with these tree hollows. Some of the most spectacular scenery here along the Olympic Peninsula and Olympic National Park are the coastlines. There is hundreds of miles of it on this peninsula, and it's all stunning. Right now I'm at Ruby Beach, and one of the things you'll notice at almost all of the beaches here on the Olympic Peninsula is a lot of driftwood. Now, this has been deposited here over decades and decades from things like blown down trees, from strong storms, and even from the days there were glaciers here. There's even been barge logs that have come through here that have left a lot of trees, so be careful where you walk because it is pretty treacherous getting around, but it certainly makes the views striking. The coastlines here are certainly a place where timing matters. When I got here, blue skies. Just a few minutes later, clouds. Just look at how beautiful this is. Welcome everybody to the shoreline of Lake Quinault. This is what makes this park so special. You have so much variety, from lakes and ocean coastline to mountains and waterfalls and rivers. It is stunning. I have so enjoyed this trip around the Olympic Peninsula. This is actually my last stop here at Lake Quinault, but it certainly does not have to be yours. There is a fantastic lodge on this lake called Quinault Lodge. There are lots of things to do here, and this is definitely one of the lesser visited parts of the park, so a lot fewer crowds than you're going to find at a lot of the other lakes and busy areas that we've seen already on this trip. Now, if you guys are new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. If you want to see more of my national park content, you can do that at the playlist in the description or over at the Parks channel, which I will link down below as well. I'll also have in that description box some information on places that you can stay in this park, as well as logistics and the route I took. So if you've got questions, look down there, but don't hesitate to drop a comment, and make sure you give this video a thumbs up too. I'm gonna enjoy the next couple of hours of sunshine here, maybe go for one last swim in the Olympics, but I will see you guys in the next adventure. As always, I'm Alice Ford. Never stop exploring. Now it's time to get these shoes off and get in the water.